Now we would be happy to invite Mr. Beer for your testimony. Welcome.
Sarah Lofgren, Ranking Member McClintock, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity. After having worked as Senior Policy Advisor for a member and Vice Chair of this important subcommittee, it is an honor to be invited back to explain the challenges that America's legal immigrants face. The simple answer to the question that this hearing poses, why don't immigrants get in line, is that immigrants cannot legally get into line. That is, apply for legal permanent residence on their own. U.S. legal immigration is based almost exclusively on selection or sponsorship by the U.S. government, U.S. families, employers, or other sponsors. Thus, the question could be restated. Why can't Americans let immigrants get into the line? And the answer to this question is that the government effectively bans us from doing so. Today, the only immigrants who can immigrate permanently from abroad without numerical limits are the spouses, minor children, and parents sponsored by adult U.S. citizens. All other permanent immigration from abroad is either capped or illegal. And the four capped categories aren't realistic options for nearly all would-be immigrants. First is the diversity visa lottery, which selects 55,000 immigrants from a pool of generally over 20 million applicants, a 0.2% chance. Second is the refugee program, which currently selects just 15,000 refugees from nearly 20 million refugees worldwide. Even worse odds. Third, other family-sponsored categories for only the closest relatives of U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents. And here the caps have created a backlog of nearly 4 million applicants, with many new applicants facing near 100-year wait times. Fourth, employer-sponsored immigration. Foreign employees also face a hard cap, also set by Congress in 1990. And half of that cap ends up being used by their spouses and minor children. Indian immigrants bear nearly the full burden of the low overall employer-sponsored caps as a result of the per-country caps, which limit immigrants from any single birthplace to no more than 7% of the green cards issued. Indians are about half the applicants, which means they end up being about 90% of those in the backlog. At the current rate of issuances, it would take a new Indian applicant applying today with a master's degree or less at least 84 years to receive a green card. During this time, nearly 200,000 Indians already in line today would die waiting, even assuming that they could stay in line that long. Another 100,000 of their minor children already waiting with them right now will age out of eligibility for green cards based on their parents' application when they turn 21 and lose their chance at permanent residence altogether. Even if you're not from India, it's effectively impossible to obtain employer sponsorship for permanent residence while you're not already in the country. This is because the government takes between 2 and 3 years to process a case abroad. That's far too long to fill an open position. And the result is that almost all employer-sponsored immigrants must first obtain an H-1B temporary work visa, come here and work for their employers while the permanent residence process unfolds. This is challenging for workers with college degrees because the cap on the H-1B visa is just 85,000, and employers petitioned for about 275,000 applicants last year. But for workers without a college degree, it's effectively impossible. There's no year-round temporary work visa for them at all, so they are shut out. And that is it. 4 options to obtain permanent residence from abroad, and none are realistic for those crossing the border. When immigration is illegal, no one can claim surprise at illegal immigration. The U.S. immigration system is far more constrained today than in its past. Before 1924, the U.S. allowed an annual rate of legal immigration as a share of its population more than double any recent year. Many years during that time, the rates were 5 times higher. But that was when the U.S. system had a viable line that most immigrants were presumptively eligible for. Today, we have few eligible categories, arbitrary caps, and endless waits. We can do better. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Byer, in 1996, Congress enacted what has become known as the 3 and 10-year bars. You discuss in your testimony how harsh these bars are, how limited the waivers are, and the impact they have on millions of individuals. Can you discuss in more detail just how these bars work and why, in your view, they need to be replaced?
Thank you for that question. Under the bars, anyone with a year of illegal presence in the United States cannot re-enter the country legally for 10 years. And this is essentially one of the most counterproductive enforcement measures that Congress has ever enacted. As a result of the bars, if someone is trying to get right with the law, and that should be the goal of our immigration enforcement system, is that we should have a process for people to correct the mistakes that they made and go home and get an immigrant visa and come back. But under this system, you are barred even if you are eligible for status, which means you have created an incentive in the law to continue to maintain illegal presence in this country and not return home and correct your mistake. And so what we've seen is people stay despite being eligible for a green card. Many of them end up being deported, and then you're subject to a permanent bar on reentry. And then you have a situation today, right now, where Border Patrol is apprehending tens of thousands of parents of U.S. citizens who are crossing the border illegally, even though they could be eligible for a green card if not for the bars that the law subjects them to. So it has completely backfired, and it hasn't worked out at all how the authors of that law expected it to.
Mr. Byer, can someone like Ms. Macher follow all the rules and still lose their H-4 status?
Absolutely. Losing your H-4 status is built into being a dependent of an H-1B worker. As soon as you turn age 21, you can lose your status. And ultimately, this is a component of the immigration system throughout. You can lose your status even if you do everything right. We've seen in recent months how 91,000 spouses who are on an H-4 visa also lose their status and lose their work authorization because of delays at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So we already talked about how these delays are impacting individuals, but at the end of the day, many people are losing their status in this country despite following every rule laid out for them in the law.
Do you know, Mr. Trump, know the answer to how many people get to other countries around the world each year? That's a big question. I realize that. Do you have any idea?
Sure. So I don't have an itemized breakdown, but it's my understanding that the rest of the world combined offers what is the equivalent of our green card or permanent immigration status. Combined, it is less than what we do on an annualized basis.
Could I answer your question real quick about the share of immigrants that come to the United States out of the share of all immigrants? Because it's actually only 10% of all immigrants worldwide come to the United States in the last 5 years. So 10 times as many immigrants are going to other countries than are coming to the United States. So it's not correct that the United States allows more immigrants here than the rest of the world combined. That's just not correct.
Mr. Byer, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the labor stats because, you know, about a year ago, I got a call from a lobbyist representing the poultry business. He was calling me because I was in this committee, wanted my help. He told me a story where down in the Deep South, 600 poultry workers had gotten deported, bringing the whole poultry industry, the whole county to a standstill, the economy. And he told me, he said, Lou, we can't get workers. And he said, it's not about wages. He said, they're all members of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. We just can't get people to come in and do these jobs. And, you know, you think about the comments that were made today, and I guess you look at numbers and you can do whatever you want to do with numbers. But, you know, in California, the 5th largest economy in the world, heavily dependent on immigrants, skilled and unskilled. You know, we're going through a pandemic. You know, we talk about the unemployment numbers, but I went out there and I visited farm workers working under what we could call dangerous conditions. But nonetheless, they were working to feed us under these conditions. And You look at Silicon Valley, you look at the pharmaceutical industry, the medical device industry. What will we do without skilled and unskilled workers? Do we have a labor shortage in this country? What is going on? Do these immigrants hurt Americans? Please, Mr. Byer.
No, they absolutely do not hurt Americans. And, it was said that there's no job American won't do. And that's certainly true. But when it comes to farm labor and meat and poultry processing and other industries, there's no unemployed Americans who are seeking out these jobs. In fact, a study was done of farm workers in North Carolina, for example, at the height of the recession in North Carolina in 2011, there were more than 500,000 unemployed North Carolinians. The H-2A program advertised to those jobs at the prevailing wage for multiple months to those unemployed Americans. And only 7 of those applicants, U.S. workers, actually came on and stayed throughout the entire season. So there is a need for foreign workers to come in and fill some of these slots. Under the H-2B program, we see the same thing. We have 100,000 labor certified, Department of Labor certified positions that are unfilled right now that need workers. And yet we're hearing that we don't have any way to get them into the country. So it's a major issue right now. Right now, some of the numbers are out of date. Today, we have more open jobs in this country than before the start of the pandemic. So yes, unemployment is high, but guess what? We're still in the middle of the pandemic. Many people are still afraid to go out to work, but immigrants are willing to go out and work these jobs, and we should let them because it's harmful to our economy not to allow it.
I want to start with you, Mr. Byer. We've said over and over, and I think a couple of my colleagues have even used the word, we are the most generous country in the world on immigration. Can you really give us some context in light of the many barriers for pathways into really getting there? I know they keep talking about this 1 million green cards, but the truth is 65% of those were based on a green card going to a relative. So just quickly, some of the barriers, and I would like it at the 1 minute mark, Madam Chair, yield to my colleague, Ms. Ross, for a question.
Ultimately, if you don't have a family member in the United States and you don't have a college degree, you're pretty much shut out of the immigration system in the United States. We have a system that basically assigns people by random lottery, that you have almost no chance of winning. We are one of the largest countries in the world. We are the 3rd largest country in the world. So the idea that 1 million should sound impressive to anyone, it's just not, it's not impressive. It's 1 million out of 330 million people. That's less than 1/3% of our population. Overall, compared to other countries controlling for the population size, we rank 61st in the world for our foreign-born share of the population. We're bottom 3rd among wealthy countries. We're 4th to last among OECD countries for employment-based immigration. And we're not even in the top 50 countries worldwide for refugee or asylum intake per capita. Even if the U.S. increased its legal immigration system 5-fold for the next decade, we still wouldn't have a foreign-born share of the population equal to the share in Australia or Canada or New Zealand or Switzerland. So the idea that the United States is letting in some absurd number of people that's totally abnormal for a developed country is just not true.
Mr. Byer, I really was so interested in the Cato Institute's survey polling results that you provided us this week. I want to get back to something that you talked about and something that we're grappling with, the visa backlogs in our immigration system. What would a more efficient system look like? What should Congress do to begin to address this issue?
As the chair said, the most important thing is fairness in the system. So everyone should be treated equally without regard to their birthplace. But ultimately, Congress does need to address the fact that there are not enough green cards for the demand from around the world. And we need these people. And so ultimately, we need to create a flexible immigration system that evolves with our economy and society. So the idea that we should have a hard cap on the number of employment-based green cards makes no sense in a modern economy where demand could change overnight. A new industry could be born tomorrow. We don't even know what it is. And yet we're deciding in Congress right now how many green cards we're going to have 10 years from now. We're dealing with a cap that's 30 years old. And yet the idea that we can't make any tweaks to that magical number makes no sense. No economist would agree with it. It's really counterproductive. And so I would argue we need a flexible cap or have the cap eliminated entirely, because every single person that we're keeping out would be a huge asset to our economy right now.
Let me just quickly ask Mr. Yang and Mr. Beyer, because I've heard this before. Can you, through me, speak to the fears that are being expressed by my friends on the other side of the aisle? How do you address that fear for us to be able to move in a bipartisan way realistically to solve this inadequate immigration system? Let me start with Mr. Beyer first, please. Do you hear?
Well, I think we can think of a number of different ways to address the concern. I mean, the main concern that I'm hearing from the other side is that there are just too many people who want to come to this country. I don't share that concern at all. I think more people contributing to this country would make us a stronger economy, a stronger country. If you look at our share of GDP, it's declined by 50% out of the share of world GDP over the last 50 years. So the U.S. influence is declining as a result of these limits on immigration. But I do think that we can find agreement in certain areas. The majority in this current committee passed an ag workforce bill. We also had an ag workforce bill passed by the last majority, Representative Goodlatte's bill. And we could find common ground about that and ultimately see that pass into law.
Mr. Beer, I hear all the time from academic and medical and research institutions in my district that our system, and particularly the rules regarding H-1B visas and work authorization for spouses, are really impeding our economic efforts and our research and development efforts, and really hurting, a lot of our medical progress, et cetera. Can you address the consequences to the U.S. economy and to Americans if we don't address some of these issues?
Look, we are already losing out dramatically as a result of our broken immigration system. India has already surpassed us in terms of software exports in the world economy. You're talking about biomedical expertise. The United States is losing out there. We know that all of the companies that were working on vaccines, all of them were employing H-1B workers. Many of their spouses are ineligible from working until they enter the green card process. And now we have Trump-era rules that are preventing those spouses from being able to renew their work authorization. So we've had 91,000 lose their work authorization over the last year. All of those people are working in high-skilled industries and occupations, and we're disemploying them and causing this huge upset in the high-skilled sector. So ultimately, I think Congress needs to step in. They need to have congressional authorization and mandates to make sure that we are treating our high-skilled workforce like the assets that they are. Ultimately, no country on earth treats their high-skilled immigrants as poorly as the United States does. So it's no wonder so many are going to other countries. We're seeing Indian immigration to Canada in the last 5 years has doubled. And so it's not surprising that the United States continues to lose out on many innovators and entrepreneurs.
How do we make sure by adjusting the caps that we don't actually hurt others? People are concerned if you adjust relative to the biggest companies, somehow others will be left out, when in fact the bill that we have worked with the Senate on doesn't completely eliminate the cap, it just adjusts it downward to 75%. Can you address that issue?
Well, the issue you're talking about is ultimately the consequence of the backlog and the per country caps is that almost all of the people in the backlog are from India. So if we do it on a first in, first out basis, then Indians are going to be processed first and new applicants will go to the back of the line. That's, in my opinion, that's a completely fair system, but there are other issues at stake. And so there is a transition process provided in the bill that enables a transition over time to phase out these country caps. But at the end of the day, a fair process is treating everyone as individuals, knowing what the process is going to be when you apply. And taking into account birthplace is just not a reasonable basis for an immigration system.
We had a report, and I'd like to ask unanimous consent to put the report in the record, but the Joint Economic Committee has prepared a report on immigrants in the U.S. economy, and they report that 29% of physicians in the United States are foreign-born, and that 25% of new firms in the United States were started by immigrants. I'm just wondering, by failing to provide for a lawful status for needed physicians and for people who want to start companies in the United States, what damage, in your judgment, does that do to the American economy and to American workers? Mr. Beer, if you can address that.
It does incredible damage. And if you look forward, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says these are going to be some of the fastest growing occupations dealing with the aging of our society. As the elderly population grows, we're going to need more physicians. We're going to need more home health aides. And home health aides are even more overrepresented by the immigrant population. They're almost 40% foreign born. So we need these workers right now, particularly dealing with the demographic situation that our country faces. The Social Security Administration is telling us we need workers to fund Social Security. So at the end of the day, I think you have to say that our system is too constrained given the moment in time right now. We have to address the challenges of our economy, and one of those is expanding the legal immigration system.